Welcome back, readers. This is a complete work of Franz Kafka. This one's called The Refusal. Got bookmarks. Moving up in the world. Got bookmarks. Got a backyard. Our little town does not lie on the frontier. Nowhere near. It's far from the frontier, in fact. So far from the frontier that perhaps no one from our town has ever been there. Desolate highlands have to be crossed, as well as wide fertile plains. To imagine even part of the road makes one tired, and more than one part one just cannot imagine. There are also big towns on the road, each far longer than ours. 10 little towns like ours laid side by side. 10 more forced down from above still would not produce enough. As one of these enormous, overcrowded towns. If one does not get lost on the way, one's bound to lose oneself in these towns. To avoid them is impossible on account of their size. But what's even further from our town in the frontier, if such distances can be compared at all? It's like saying that a man of 300 years is older than one of 200. What is even further than the frontier is the capital. Whereas we get news of the frontier, wars now and again, of the capital we learn next to nothing. We civilians, that is. For of course the government officials have very good connections with the capital. They can get news from there in as little as 3 months. So they claim, at least. Now it's remarkable that I'm continually being surprised by the way we in our town humbly submit to all orders issued by the capital. For centuries no political change has been brought about by the citizens themselves. In the capital, great rulers have superseded each other indeed. Even dynasties have deposed or annihilated, and new ones have started. In the past century, even the capital itself was destroyed. A new one was founded far away from it. Later on this too, and was destroyed, and the old one rebuilt. Yet none of this had any influence on our little town. Our officials have always remained at their posts. The highest official came from the capital, the less high from the other towns, the lowest from among ourselves. That's how it's always been, and it's suited us. The highest official is the chief tax collector. He has the rank of colonel, is known as such. The present one is an old man. I've known him for years, because he was already a colonel when I was a child. At first he rose very fast in his career, but then he seems to have advanced no further. Actually, for our little town, his rank is good enough. A higher rank would be out of place. When I try to recall him, I see him sitting on the veranda of his house in the market square, leaning back, pipe in mouth. Above him the roof flutters the imperial flag. On the sides of the veranda, which is so big that minor military maneuvers are sometimes held there, washing hangs out to dry. His grandchildren in beautiful silk clothes play around him. They are not allowed down in the market square. The children there are considered untrustworthy. The children there are considered unworthy of them, but the grandchildren are attracted by the square. So they thrust their heads between the posts of the banister. When the children below begin to quarrel, they quarrel from above. They join in. This colonel, then, commands the town. I don't think he's ever produced a document entitling him to this position. Very likely he does not possess such a thing. Maybe he really is chief tax collector, but is that all? Does that entitle him to rule over the other departments of the administration as well? True, his office is very important for the government, but the citizens, it's hardly important. One is almost under the impression that the people here say, "Now you've taken all we possess, please take us as well." In reality, of course, it was not he who seized the power, nor is he a tyrant. just come about over the years that your chief tax collector is automatically the top official and the colonel accepts the tradition as we do. Yet while he lives among us, without laying too much stress on his official position, he is something quite different from the ordinary citizen. When a delegation comes to him with a request, he stands there like a wall of the world. Behind him is nothingness. One imagines hearing voices whispering in the background, but this is probably a delusion after all. He represents the end of all things, at least for us. These receptions, he really was worth seeing. Once as a child I was present when a delegation of citizens arrived to ask him for a government subsidy because the poorest quarter of the town had been burned to the ground. My father, the blacksmith, a well-respected man in the community, was a member of the delegation and had taken me along. There's nothing exceptional about this. Everyone rushes to spectacles of this kind. One can hardly distinguish the actual delegation from the crowd. Since these receptions usually take place in the veranda, there are even people who climb up the ladder by the market square and take place in the ongoings from over the banister. On this occasion, about a quarter of the veranda had been reserved for the colonel, the crowd filling the rest of it. A few soldiers kept watch, some of them standing around in a semicircle. Actually, a single soldier would have been quite enough. Such is our fear of them. I don't know where these soldiers come from. In any case, from a long way off. They all look very much alike. They wouldn't even need a uniform. They're small, not strong, but agile people. The most striking thing about them is the prominence of their teeth, which almost overcrowd their mouths, and a certain restless twitching of their small, narrow eyes. This makes them the terror of the children, but also their delight. For again and again, these children long to be frightened by these teeth. For again and again, these eyes, so as to be able to run away in horror. Even grown-ups probably never quite lose this childish terror. At least it continues to have an effect. There are, of course, other factors contributing to it. The soldiers speak a dialect utterly incomprehensible to us. They can hardly get used to ours, all of which produces a certain shut-off, unapproachable quality corresponding, as it happens, to their character, for they are silent, serious, and rigid. They don't actually do anything evil, yet they are almost unbearable in an evil sense. The soldier, for example, enters a shop, buys some trifling object, stays there leaning against the counter, listens to the conversations, probably doesn't understand them, yet gives an impression of understanding. He himself does not say a word, just blankly stares at the speaker, then back at the listeners, all while keeping his hand on the hilt of a long knife on his belt. This is revolting. One loses the desire to talk. The customers start leaving the shop. Only when it's quite empty does the soldier leave. Thus, wherever the soldier appears, our lively people grow silent. That's what happened this time, too. As on all solemn occasions, the colonel stood upright, holding in front of him 2 poles of bamboo in his outstretched hands. This is an ancient custom, implying more or less that he supports the law, that the law supports him. Now everyone knows, of course, what to expect on the veranda, yet each time people take fright all over again. On this occasion, too, the man chosen to speak could not begin, for he was already standing opposite the colonel when his courage failed him, muttering a few excuses. He pushed his way back into the crowd. No other suitable person was willing to speak, albeit several unsuitable ones offered themselves. A commotion ensued, and messengers were sent in search of various citizens who were well-known speakers. During this time, the colonel stood motionless, only his chest moving visibly up and down to his breathing. Not that he breathed with difficulty, it was just that he breathed so conspicuously, much as frogs breathe, except that with them it's normal, with here it's exceptional. I squeezed myself through the grown-ups. I watched through a gap of 2 soldiers until one of them kicked me away with his knee. Meanwhile, the man originally chosen to speak had regained his composure. Firmly held up by 2 citizens, was delivering his address It was touching to see him smile through this solemn speech describing such a grievous misfortune, a most humble smile, which strove in vain to elicit some slight reaction on the colonel's face. Finally, he formulated the request. I think he was only asking for a year's tax exemption, but possibly for timber for the imperial forests at a reduced price. He then bowed low, remaining in this position for some time, as did everyone except the colonel, the soldiers, and a number of officials in the background. To the child it seemed ridiculous that the people on the ladder should climb down a few rungs so as not to be seen during the significant pause, and now and again peer inquisitively over the floor of the veranda. After this lasted quite a while, an official, a little man, stepped up to the colonel, tried to reach the ladder's height by standing on his toes. The colonel, still motionless save for his deep breathing, whispered something into his ear, whereupon the little man clapped his hands and everyone rose. The petition had been refused, he announced. You may go. An undeniable sense of relief passed through the crowd. Everyone surged out, hardly a soul paying any attention to the colonel, who, as it were, had turned once more into a human being like the rest of us. I still caught one last glimpse of him, as he wearily let go of those poles, which fell to the ground, then sank into an armchair produced by some officials, and promptly put a pipe in his mouth. The whole occurrence is not isolated. It's the general run of things. Indeed, it does happen now and again that a minor petition is granted, but then invariably looks as though the colonel has done it as a powerful private person in his own responsibility, and it had to be kept secret from the government. Not explicitly, of course, but that's what it feels like. No doubt in our little town, the colonel's eyes, so far as we know, are also the eyes of the government, yet there is a difference which is impossible to comprehend completely. In all important matters, however, the citizens can count on a refusal. And now the strange fact is that without this refusal, one simply cannot get along, yet at the same time, these official occasions designed to receive the refusal are by no means a formality. Time after time one goes there, full of expectation and all seriousness, and then one returns, if not exactly strengthened or happy, nevertheless not disappointed or tired. About these things I do not have to ask the opinion of anyone else. I feel them in myself, as everyone does, nor do I have a great desire to find out how these things are connected. As a matter of fact, there is, so far as my observations go, a certain age group that is not content. These are the young people, roughly between 17 and 20. Quite young fellows, in fact, who are utterly incapable of foreseeing the consequences of even the least significant, far less revolutionary ideas. It's among them that the discontent creeps in.